I want to walk you through my two favorite grips for every single pitch type. So let's start with the fastball. Traditional four seam right here, horseshoe on the outside of the ball. You want your fingers to be just a little bit apart, not crazy far apart, not completely together, just slightly apart, making sure that you feel like you're hugging these seams right here so you can rip straight down through the ball to create as much backspin as you can. The second grip is literally just the opposite. So instead of being on this side of the horseshoe, you're going to flip it over so that the horseshoe is on the inside part of the ball. Following the same principles, I want my fingers slightly apart, and I want to focus on hooking those seams with these two fingers so I can rip straight down through them to create as much backspin as I can on the ball. Both of these can work. I've seen them work really well for multiple players, so it's just a matter of figuring out which one works better for you. Sometimes one of these, specifically the horseshoe on the inside, makes the ball tend to cut just a little bit more, but play around with it to see which one works best for you. Now for this sinker. So my number one go-to sinker grip is a one seam. So instead of being just a traditional two seam here, you would shift the ball like this. So your middle finger is on top of this seam here. Index is just on the bare part of the ball like that. So when I throw the ball, I'm ripping through this one seam. It's going to rotate like a one seam. So when you see this moving fast, you'll clearly be able to see the one seam rotation as you're throwing this pitch. The second one, a couple options. I'll say it's 2 and 3 grips here. Would be right here where your fingers are together in between the seams. You also could separate them and go right on top of the seams like so. Fingers together seems to work a little bit better for me and some of the guys I've worked with, but obviously a traditional two seam is going to work really well also for many guys. Now moving on to cutters / gyro sliders. I'm going to put these in the same bucket because it's basically the same grips. It's just a matter of how you're releasing the ball on how much depth or how much true bullet spin that it's going to get. So the first one, you're going to start with that fastball grip that I showed for number 2 to where the horseshoe is on the inside. And all you're going to do is you're going to slightly turn the ball. So for me being left-handed, I am just going to turn it slightly clockwise like so. So I have a slight angle on this ball like this, still hugging those seams. And all I'm going to think about is ripping through the ball like this to create bullet spin with this part of the ball facing towards you as I'm throwing this ball. The more it's facing towards you, the more bullet spin it's going to have, the more true gyro spin it's going to have and more depth. The more it's slightly facing this way, so if we think fastball here, the more it's kind of in between here and that true bullet, the more cutter and the more carry it's going to have on the ball while still getting the cutting action. Grip number 2 for the cutter, you're going to hold it like this. So if we think about a traditional four-seam fastball, I'm basically just going to slide it over a little bit and making sure that I'm still going at an angle on these seams. So I don't want to be shifted like this because that can run the risk of getting a little bit too much into one seam territory. So we want to make sure we still have an angle going this way as a lefty, like so. And then when I throw this ball, it's going to be just like that other grip to where I'm ripping through the seams and creating that bullet spin on the ball. Now, this isn't like for everybody, these two grips on what I'm about to say, but what I have tended to notice is guys that have more over-the-top slots benefit more from this grip. For some reason, they just seem to rip down through the outside part of the ball a little bit easier with that grip. Guys that are more 3/4 or a little bit lower slot, the off-centered four-seam grip seems to work a little bit better. Now, once again, that's not for everybody. I've seen both work for both situations. It's just it tends to be more higher slot guys. This one works a little bit better. 3/4 or lower slot guys, this one seems to work a little bit better. But experiment with both, figure out which one works best for you. Now for the sweepers. There's a few different grips. There's really 3 total grips and variations within those 3 that you can do. I'm going to show you my 2 favorite. The first one is the split 2 seam like this. So you'll have your middle finger up against this seam like so. And then the index finger is going to go on the other side of this seam here, making sure that it's up against that seam so I feel like I have some leverage and something that I can rip on. And same with this middle finger, making sure that it's up against that seam. Now you can play with this a little bit if you're struggling to get the depth or it's spinning too much like a fastball or too bullety. You can spike that index finger just a little bit. With this grip, you don't really want to go full on spike. A slight baby spike, though, can be beneficial, so you feel like you have a little bit more weight on that middle finger so you can rip through the outside part of the ball a little bit better. Then the second grip, you're going to have your middle finger in the horseshoe like so, and this index finger will just rest here. If you need, once again, if you need to get more depth or you're struggling to get the sweep that you want, you can spike that index finger a little bit like so, or you can even go all the way up into the seam if that's comfortable for you. Moving on to the curveball grip now. This first one's by far my favorite. It's worked really well for a lot of guys that I work with, as well as myself. It just feels more natural and easier to throw. Just takes a little bit of time to get used to the spike. So what we're going to do, you're going to have your middle finger going along this seam like so. Index finger is going to go into this seam. So my nail is actually going in between the seams like so. And then my thumb is on this seam underneath here. So I have 3 seams that I'm in contact with. My thumb is on this one, my index finger is going into this seam, and then my middle finger is up against this one. So I have a lot of leverage on this pitch to really rip down in front of this baseball to create the top spin that I'm looking for. I like to have this grip deep. Curveballs typically I like to have a little bit deeper, like there's really no space in my hand on this one. And all I'm thinking about is having a stiff wrist, and I am karate chopping out in front. That middle finger is going out in front of the baseball so it can slip out like so to create that 12-6 spin. The other option would be just to go on the other side. So for grip number 2, instead of being on the back side of the seam like this, just go on the other side like so. You can spike it or not spike it depending on your capabilities of holding this supinated position. Same with this first spike curve grip. If the spike doesn't feel good, but you're able to stay supinated, you can just have your index finger resting like so against the middle finger when you throw this pitch. And a training tool that you can use for this, or not a training tool, but a way that you can train this, I believe is the way Adam Wainwright threw his curveball all the time, is just to have your index finger off of the ball. So it's all on the middle finger, and you're just having that same cue of karate chopping out front, and that index finger is almost your guide of where you want to throw this and how you want the spin direction to be. So if I think about that index finger going straight forward, it should help me get a little bit more 12-6 spin on the pitch. Moving on to changeups, my favorite pitch to throw by far. So changeups, there's so many different variations that we can do. This is really tough to pick 2, but I'm going to pick 2 that are slightly different so that you can try different options for what might work for you. The first one's going to be the kick change. It's just the results are just too good not to make this the first grip that I show you. There's a couple different variations you can do this of where you're positioned on the seams. I'm going to show you where I like to do it. So instead of being like a traditional 2 seam here, I like to go further back on the ball. I feel like it allows it to slip out of my hand a little bit better. And for me, slipping is a good thing with the changeup because it allows me to kick the axis without forcing it, because it's slipping to my fingertips a little bit sooner than if it was deeper in my hand or if I was on top of the seams more. So I'm slightly further back like this, and I just do a little baby spike with that middle finger. So just a little bit, really just enough to make my middle finger and my ring finger the same length. So you can see right here, they're basically the same length, as opposed to when it's flat, it's a little bit longer. This is going to allow it to come off of both of those fingers a little bit more evenly, which is really beneficial for creating the spin that I want. Then index finger is just kind of a circle like this, thumb underneath the ball. Pretty loose grip for me, and all I'm thinking about, honestly, is just throwing this like a fastball. I tend to be more of a supinator, so I naturally stay on the side of the ball a little bit, which gives me the spin I need. If you are a guy that is a pronator and you're trying to throw this pitch, number one, you could potentially just try to pronate it and see what it does. There's plenty of guys that throw a kick change that pronate it and they get a lot of movement on it. But another option that you could try is just make the spike bigger, because the bigger I make the spike, at least, the lower the spin efficiency is. So like when I go full on spike, it's like 60% efficiency, which is too low for what I'm trying to get the pitch to do, versus when I do a baby spike, it's usually around 70 to 80% efficiency. So that's just a simple thing you could do. Just make that spike as big as you need to if you're trying to just throw it like a fastball, but you want to kill some of that efficiency so you can get the seam effects that you're looking for. Grip number 2 is a 1-seam changeup. And this is actually the changeup I used to throw when I actually played before I learned about all these other options that are out there. So for this one, it's very similar to the sinker. It's just with different fingers. So if you remember with the 1-seam sinker, we had our middle finger on the seam, index like so. For this, we're just going to do it with the ring finger on the seam, middle finger on the bare part of the ball. And I'm then just going to form a circle with my index finger like so, super loose in my hand, trying to rip through that seam with the ring finger to create that 1-seam action on the ball. Once again, many options for this pitch. You could do a bunch of different iterations of both of those grips that I just showed. Last pitch type, the splitter. These two splitter grips I'm going to show you, they're not necessarily traditional splitters, but they do get split action. I kind of bucket splits and changeups in the same category, to be honest with you, because we're looking for similar things. Splitters usually have a little bit less horizontal, but they do have the depth, so they're kind of in the same family. It's just a matter of what you're looking for. If you need more depth, less run, or if you're looking for more run, or both depth and run. For these grips, this first one is my favorite that I'm using with a lot of guys right now that are having a ton of success with it. Some might say this is a changeup. For me, I would call this more of a split variation. And truthfully, the RPMs on this is, for a lot of guys, is in the triple digits. It's not in the thousands. Like, it's as low as 600-700 RPMs for some guys. So what you're going to do, you're going to use these three fingers, your pinky, ring finger, middle finger. You're going to put them together in between these two seams right here. So I'm not going on top of the seam. I'm trying to stay right in between the best I can. My index finger is going to curl over this seam right here, just like so. And then my thumb goes underneath the ball. I'm trying to stay as loose as I can, and a little trick that helps me is to think about curling that index finger more. So the more I curl it, the more I curl it, the more the ball slips out of my hand and the more it gets the spin that I am looking for. If it's too deep in my hand, and let's just say my index finger is more flat like this, the ball tends to stick in my hand and it kind of just comes out with more backspin, or it will get stuck and then I slide on the outside part of the ball and it spins like a slider. So for me, making sure we have a little bit of looseness, loose enough at least so that we can curl that index finger, then we're going to allow the ball to slip out and we're going to get the action that we're looking for. And there's a couple of things that you can try to cue yourself on. One would be hold it loose and just throw it through the split. So I'm trying to throw it between these two fingers here to throw it straight down. Another option, if you're cutting it too much, you're going to round it too much, is to try to throw it like a fastball with these three fingers. So I'm trying to throw it like a fastball straight through those fingers. For some guys, that works as well. The last option, grip number 2 for the splitter, is basically the same grip, but we're in a different part of the ball. So we're going to hold it with our 3 fingers going here on this side of the ball, and then my index finger is going to be curled like so, just like this. So the other one was like this, almost a little one seam action, if you will. And then this one is like this. So I'm going around the horseshoe a little bit more with this one. Same principle, still trying to curl this index finger a little bit. Same cues, just trying to figure out which one works best for me. So that was a quick rundown on my top 2 grips for every single pitch type. There's obviously an endless amount of grips that are out there that you can throw. If you got value out of this video, you might want to check out my pitch grip database. I have over 100 grips. I have Edgertronic footage of pro guys, myself, throwing these pitches with the TrackMan data so you can see what the metrics are and what that spin actually looks like. It's completely free. I have over 7,000 people that are in that are getting access to that. I'm updating it constantly as I find more videos, more grips. I'm putting them in that file. So you can check that out. It also comes with a 4-day email subscription, or I don't know if subscription is the right word, but email sequence that walks through some of these grips and cues that you might be able to use for yourself. And if you want to go a lot deeper and you want to really understand how to develop an arsenal that fits you, you might want to check out my course, Pitch Design You. I lay out every single aspect of pitch design. I talk about what the metrics mean, what we're looking for on each pitch type. I walk through numerous grips on how to throw them, cues, what might be useful for you. And then I also show Major League averages, Division I averages. I use player examples of big leaguers of what their movement plots look like, how they have changed over time, and also how they are using their stuff. So you have all these pitches that are great, but now how do I understand to use them and attack hitters with them when it's a lefty versus a righty, a power hitter versus a contact hitter? Just understanding your arsenal and how to use it and maximize it. That's what I try to help accomplish in this course, is giving you a blueprint for what does everything mean? How do I decide what I need to develop? How do I develop it? And then once I have this arsenal, how do I actually use it to get people out? I have over 150 people that are inside that course. I'll make sure to attach that below for more information on that as well. But until next time, if you have any questions, please let me know.